Have you ever faced one of those moments where everything seems to go wrong all at once? Maybe you lost a job you loved, a relationship ended unexpectedly, or a project you poured your heart into fell apart. It's in these moments that we feel most vulnerable, most exposed to the chaos of life, and it's in these moments that we desperately need something solid to hold on to, something that helps us stand firm when the ground beneath us feels like it's crumbling. That's where an ancient philosophy, practiced by some of history's most unshakable minds, comes into play. For centuries, Stoicism has offered a practical roadmap for building resilience, clarity, and an unbreakable frame that allows you to navigate life's toughest challenges with strength and purpose. In this video, we're diving deep into 25 powerful Stoic techniques designed to help you forge that unbreakable mental and emotional frame. These aren't just abstract ideas or historical curiosities, they're actionable, real-world tools that you can start using today to reclaim your inner stability and face adversity with courage rather than fear. Whether you're dealing with stress at work, uncertainty in your personal life, or just the daily pressures that wear you down, these methods will help you recenter yourself and respond from a place of strength, not reaction. Think of this as your personal guide to cultivating resilience, inspired by the wisdom of philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, individuals who faced wars, betrayals, and immense personal loss, yet remained grounded and purposeful. We'll explore how to reframe obstacles as opportunities, how to detach from outcomes without losing your drive, and how to build habits that reinforce mental toughness day by day. This isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about understanding what you can control, accepting what you can't, and moving forward with clarity and conviction. So if you're ready to transform how you respond to life's challenges and build a foundation that can't be shaken, you're in the right place. Let's begin. The first and perhaps most vital technique is what the Stoic philosopher Epictetus called the dichotomy of control. This is the bedrock principle, the very foundation upon which an unbreakable frame is built. It begins with a simple but transformative act of sorting every single thing in your life into two distinct categories, those that are within your control and those that are not. Your own thoughts, your judgments, your actions, your desires, your aversions, these are your sacred domain, the things you have absolute command over. Everything else, the weather, the past, other people's opinions, the traffic, whether you get that promotion, even the health of your own body, falls outside that inner citadel. These are not yours to control. Most of our anxiety, our frustration, and our emotional suffering stems from a fundamental error. We exhaust ourselves trying to command the uncontrollable while neglecting the power we do possess. Think about the last time you were stuck in a terrible traffic jam, running late for an important meeting. You likely felt that surge of stress, maybe even anger. You pound the steering wheel, you curse the other drivers, you agonize over the consequences. But what part of that situation can you actually control? You cannot unclog the highway. You cannot make the cars in front of you disappear. The only things truly within your power are your response. You can choose to accept the delay calmly. You can use the time to listen to an audiobook or organize your thoughts for the meeting, and you can decide to call ahead to politely inform them you've been delayed. The event itself is neutral. It's your judgment of it as a catastrophe that creates the turmoil. By shifting your focus entirely to your own voluntary actions, you reclaim your peace. Or consider receiving unexpected criticism at work. Your immediate, raw emotional reaction might be one of defensiveness or hurt. That's natural, but the Stoic move is to pause and apply the dichotomy. You cannot control the fact that your colleague criticized you. You cannot control their thoughts or their right to voice an opinion. What you can control is your assessment of their feedback. Is there a kernel of truth in it that you can use to improve? Is it merely a reflection of their own bad day? Your response is yours to choose. You can react with hostility. You can internalize it as a personal failure, or you can evaluate it with calm detachment, accept what is useful, and discard the rest without letting it shake your sense of self. This practice isn't about becoming passive or resigned to fate. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about directing your energy with laser-like precision. When you stop wasting effort on things you cannot change, you unlock a tremendous reserve of power to invest in what you can, your own character, your efforts, and your actions. The goal is to focus your will on the process, doing your absolute best while releasing any attachment to the outcome, which is never fully guaranteed. This is how you build a frame that remains solid regardless of external chaos. The world outside may be stormy and unpredictable, but your inner world becomes a place of purposeful action and unshakable calm. Building on that foundation of focusing only on what you control, the second technique invites you to proactively confront the very things you cannot control. This is negative visualization, or as the Stoics called it, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It might sound counterintuitive or even pessimistic at first. Why would you willingly imagine things going wrong? But this practice, championed by thinkers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, is one of the most powerful tools for building mental resilience and a profound appreciation for the life you have right now. It's not about dwelling on fear, it's about inoculating yourself against it. Seneca, a wealthy advisor to the Roman Emperor Nero, regularly practiced this by contemplating the loss of his status, his possessions, and even his family. He didn't do this to make himself miserable. He did it to realize a crucial truth, that these things were never truly his to begin with. They are merely on loan from fortune, and fortune can reclaim them at any moment. By mentally rehearsing their loss, he stripped them of their power to shock or devastate him. He wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and this exercise is the antidote. It allows you to experience the emotion of loss in the safety of your own mind. So if it ever happens in reality, you are not encountering that terrain for the first time. You've already mapped it out. You know the way through. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who spent years leading brutal military campaigns on the frontiers of the empire, constantly reminded himself of the impermanence of all things. He would visualize the court around him vanishing, the great city of Rome falling into ruin, and his own life ending. This wasn't morbid, it was a practice in humility and focus. It forced him to concentrate on his present duty and his own virtue, the only things that were truly, permanently his. By staring into the abyss, he found a deeper commitment to his purpose. So how do you practice this? Let's walk through a simple exercise you can do today. Find a quiet moment and bring to mind something you deeply value and, admittedly, fear losing. It could be your job, your health, or a key relationship. Now close your eyes and vividly imagine that it has been taken away. Don't just skim the surface. Truly immerse yourself in the scenario. If it's your job, picture clearing out your desk, the feeling of telling your family, the uncertainty of the next mortgage payment. Sit with that discomfort, feel the anxiety rise, then guide your mind through the next steps. What would you actually do? You would update your resume. You would reach out to your network. You would find a way to cut expenses. You would discover reserves of strength and creativity you didn't know you had. You realize that while it would be incredibly difficult, you would not be annihilated. You would adapt, you would persevere, and you would find a way forward. Finally, and this is the most important part, open your eyes. See that it hasn't happened. Your job is still there. Your health is intact. Your loved one is safe. But your perspective has fundamentally shifted. The ordinary day you are taking for granted is now revealed as a gift. The minor irritations fade into insignificance. This is the double benefit of negative visualization. It simultaneously builds mental toughness for adversity and dramatically heightens gratitude for the present. You are no longer living in fear of loss. You are living in appreciation of what you have right here, right now. Now, if the dichotomy of control is about focusing your energy wisely, and negative visualization is about preparing your mind for adversity. The third technique is about transforming your entire relationship with that adversity itself. This is the profound practice of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. While the Stoics deeply embodied this concept, it was the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche who later gave it its powerful name and rallying cry, declaring, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati. That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. This is the ultimate reframe. It's the move from grudging acceptance, I guess I have to deal with this, to active, enthusiastic embrace. It's looking at every single event in your life, especially the setbacks, the failures, and the pain, and choosing to see it not as an obstacle in your path, but as the path itself. Every experience, without exception, is raw material for your growth, a necessary ingredient in the person you are becoming. The Stoics believed that the universe is a rational, interconnected whole, and that everything that happens is part of that web. To resent an event is to rebel against the very fabric of reality itself, a futile and exhausting struggle. Amor Fati is about laying down your arms and saying, "This too is for me." We can see this philosophy in action through the life of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor. His personal journals, now known as meditations, were not written for publication but as his own daily spiritual exercises. And they are filled with this exact principle. He didn't just endure the countless political betrayals, the pressures of leading an empire, the years spent away from home on grueling military campaigns, or even the heartbreaking loss of several children. He actively used them as his gymnasium for virtue. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." A plague sweeping through his legions wasn't just a tragedy, it was an opportunity to exercise compassion and duty. A difficult person in his court wasn't merely an annoyance, they were a training partner sent to test his patience and tolerance. He loved his fate because he understood it was the only material he had to work with to build his character. This isn't about pretending that painful things don't hurt. It's about shifting your perspective on what that pain means. Imagine two artists are given a block of rough, dark granite. One artist sees it as a flawed, ugly stone, laments that it isn't smooth, white marble, and abandons it. The other artist sees the very same block with its unique cracks and color variations and gets excited. They understand that the unique challenges of this specific material will force them to create something more interesting and powerful than they ever could have with the plain marble. They love the stone for exactly what it is. Your life is that block of granite. Amor Fati is choosing to be the second artist. So how do you start to cultivate this love? It begins with a simple change in your internal dialogue. When a challenge arises, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you can ask, "What is this teaching me? How is this preparing me for something greater?" A project failure at work isn't a mark of your incompetence. It's a masterclass in what doesn't work, giving you invaluable data for your next attempt. A difficult breakup isn't just a heartbreak. It's a painful but necessary pruning, making space for new growth and clarifying what you truly need in a partner. Even a seemingly random event, like a flat tire on a rainy day, can be an exercise in patience and problem solving, or an unexpected moment of quiet reflection you wouldn't have otherwise had. This practice builds an unbreakable frame because it makes you antifragile. Something that is robust simply withstands a shock. Something that is antifragile actually gets stronger because of it. By loving your fate, you stop being a victim of circumstances and start being a student of them. You begin to welcome the very things you used to fear because you trust in your ability to not just survive them but to use them. You realize that a life without obstacles would be a life without strength. A life without loss would be a life without love, and a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. Your fate, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, is not your enemy. It is your most demanding and effective teacher. This brings us to a fourth technique that powerfully complements the inward focus of Amor Fati by offering an outward shift in perspective. It's known as the view from above, a mental exercise that Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again in his writings. The goal is to temporarily detach from your immediate ground-level problems by zooming way out to see your life from a cosmic vantage point. It's about realizing that your daily struggles, while deeply important to you, are occurring on a tiny speck of dust hurtling through an incomprehensibly vast and ancient universe. This isn't meant to make your life seem meaningless. Rather, it's designed to grant you immense clarity and humility, shrinking your anxieties down to their true size. Marcus Aurelius would vividly describe this practice. He'd instruct himself to mentally rise above his own time and place, to look down upon the bustling Roman Forum from high above, seeing the tiny figures of people scrambling about their business. He'd then zoom out further, visualizing the entire Mediterranean Sea, then the Earth itself as a mere ball, and finally the cosmos, an infinite expanse of stars and void. From this perspective, the emperor's own problems, the political scheming, the military threats, the burdens of leadership appeared as fleeting and small as the quarrels of ants over a single crumb. He wrote that from this view, the Earth is a mere point in space, and all the drama of human life is confined to this tiny dot. You don't need to be a Roman emperor to use this tool. We have modern advantages he couldn't have dreamed of. Think of those stunning photographs taken from the International Space Station, the delicate curve of the Earth against the blackness of space, the paper-thin atmosphere, the continents without borders. Or use the satellite view on a Maps application on your phone. Zoom all the way out until our planet is just a glowing blue and marble icon. Now find your own city, your neighborhood, your street, and finally the roof over your head. In that building, there is a person you worrying about a specific problem. From this cosmic perspective, how consequential does that problem truly feel? This exercise drains the drama from our self-created crises. That angry email, that social slight, that minor professional setback, they lose their power when viewed against the backdrop of galaxies and geologic time. But the view from above isn't just about space, it's also about time. Take a moment to consider the vast timeline of history. Every person you have ever known or read about, every hero and every villain, every great empire and every forgotten tribe has existed in a narrow sliver of time. In 100 years, everyone you know will be gone. In 1,000 years, the language you speak may be unreadable. In 1,000,000 years, the very rock your city is built upon may have eroded away. This realization is not depressing, it is profoundly liberating. It asks a simple question: if all of this is temporary, what is truly worth your limited energy and attention? It immediately clarifies your priorities, pushing you to focus on what matters, your character, your virtues, the kindness you show to others, and to let go of the petty grievances and vain pursuits that consume so much of our days. The ultimate gift of this practice is a deep and abiding sense of peace. When you consciously adopt the view from above, you are reconnecting with the whole of nature. You see yourself not as an isolated individual fighting against the world, but as a small yet integral part of a magnificent, unfolding system. Your brief life is a note in a symphony that has been playing for billions of years. This understanding cultivates a gentle humility, quieting the ego that screams that every minor inconvenience is a catastrophe. It returns you to your daily life grounded, calm, and ready to engage with your real problems from a place of strength and perspective, rather than from a place of frantic, myopic fear. Following that expansive cosmic perspective, we turn inward to a far more intimate and practical tool, one that allows you to capture and examine your daily life with the same clarity the Stoics sought. The fifth technique is journaling like a Stoic, and it is perhaps the most direct and actionable method for building the self-awareness that forms the core of an unbreakable frame. While many great Stoics wrote extensively, we have the incredible fortune that the personal journal of the most powerful man in the ancient world, Marcus Aurelius, survives today. His meditations were never intended for publication. They were his private spiritual exercises, a series of notes and reminders he wrote to himself, often during the exhausting years of military campaigns. They are not a polished philosophical treatise, but a raw, real-time record of a man applying Stoic principles to the immense pressures of his life. This is the ultimate model for our own practice. The Stoic journal is not a diary of events in the sense of what I had for lunch. It is a rigorous audit of your mind, your judgments, and your character. Its primary purpose is to close the gap between knowing what is right and actually doing it. We can all intellectually agree with the dichotomy of control, but it's in the heat of the moment that we forget. Journaling is how you bring those moments back into the light, examine them without judgment, and prepare yourself to do better next time. Marcus didn't write for an audience. He wrote to argue with himself, to coach himself, to chastise himself gently, and to reinforce his deepest convictions. He'd famously begin sections by addressing himself. Say to yourself first thing in the morning, or you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to disturb you. His journal was his personal coach, always available. So how do you start? The structure of a Stoic journal entry can be simple but profoundly effective. Many modern practitioners find it helpful to use a framework inspired by the three Stoic disciplines outlined by Epictetus: perception, action, and will. You can structure your nightly reflection around three key prompts. First, for perception, what happened today, but more importantly, how did my initial judgments and reactions color those events? Did I immediately label a delay as a disaster or a critic as an enemy? This is where you apply the view from above to your own day, stripping away the drama to see the events for what they truly were, not what your emotional mind said they were. The second prompt focuses on action. Review your own behavior. Where did I act in accordance with my virtues? Where did I fall short? Be specific and honest, but not self-flagellating. The goal is not to punish yourself, but to learn. For instance, when my colleague interrupted me in the meeting, I felt a surge of anger and responded with sarcasm. That was not virtuous. My action, which I control, was poor. Next time, I can choose to pause, recognize their comment might have merit, and respond with calm assertiveness instead. This turns a failure into a training session. The third prompt is for will, which ties into Amor Fati. What external events occurred that were outside my control? How did I meet them? Did I accept them with resistance, or did I welcome them as fuel for growth? For example, the project timeline was moved up unexpectedly. I initially complained and stressed, which was a waste of energy. This change is an opportunity to practice efficiency and focus. I accept it as my new challenge. This reinforces the habit of loving your fate. Beyond this nightly review, you can also use your journal for morning preparation. Marcus would write maxims to guide his day, like setting an intention to meet arrogance with kindness, or to remember that annoying people are placed in his path to test his patience. You can do the same. Write down one Stoic principle you want to focus on for the day, such as, today, I will focus only on my own efforts, not the outcome. Or, I will remember that others act from their own ignorance, not to harm me. This sets a mental filter for your entire day. The physical act of writing is crucial. It slows down your thinking and forces clarity. The messiness of your thoughts becomes organized on the page. Over time, this journal becomes more than a log. It becomes a map of your progress. You can look back on entries from months ago and see how your reactions to similar events have changed, how a situation that once would have ruined your week now barely registers. That tangible evidence of growth is incredibly reinforcing. It proves to you that your frame is indeed becoming stronger, more resilient, and truly unbreakable. You are not just reading about Stoicism, you are actively engraving its principles into your character, one day and one reflection at a time. This brings us to a sixth technique that takes the principles of Amor Fati and makes them intensely practical, a concept that author Ryan Holiday helped popularize for a modern audience with his book, The Obstacle is the Way. The core idea is incredibly direct. An obstacle, by its very nature, is not something to be circumvented or merely endured. It is the very thing you must engage with directly, because within it lies the opportunity for your greatest progress. The obstacle doesn't block the path, the obstacle is the path. It's the raw material upon which you practice your virtue, build your resilience, and forge your character. This mindset shift is what separates those who are broken by hardship from those who are built by it. We can find a masterclass in this approach in the story of Thomas Edison. In December 1914, a massive fire broke out at his manufacturing complex in West Orange, New Jersey. It wasn't just a small workshop, it was one of the largest industrial facilities in the world at the time. And the blaze was catastrophic, destroying years of research, prototypes, and countless irreplaceable records. As the fire raged, Edison's 24-year-old son, Charles, desperately searched for his father, fearing how the 67-year-old inventor would react to seeing his life's work literally going up in smoke. He finally found him standing calmly, watching the inferno, his face glowing in the firelight. "Where's Mom?" Edison asked his stunned son. "Go get her and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." His reaction seems almost superhuman, but it wasn't denial or a lack of emotion. It was the ultimate application of obstacle as the way. In that moment, Edison immediately accepted the reality of the fire. He couldn't control that it happened, but he could control his perception of it and his actions following it. He famously told a reporter the next morning, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." He didn't see ashes, he saw a clean slate. Within weeks, he had secured new financing and was leading a team that rebuilt the entire facility, which ultimately became more modern and efficient than the original. The obstacle of the fire didn't halt his work, it forced an upgrade. He pivoted, using the disaster as fuel for a new beginning. This is the three-part Stoic process that Holiday outlines, a framework you can apply to any challenge you face. It starts with perception. You must first manage your initial emotional interpretation of the event. The obstacle itself is neutral. It is your judgment that labels it as bad or insurmountable. The first task is to strip away the panic, the fear, and the drama to see the thing for what it truly is without the emotional noise. A project cancellation is not a personal indictment, it's a redirection of resources. A market crash is not an ending, it's a reshuffling of the board. A serious illness is a brutal challenge, but within it lies the opportunity to learn profound lessons about vulnerability, patience, and what truly matters in life. Your first and most important job is to refuse to be overwhelmed by your initial impression. The second step is action. Once you have a clear, objective view of the obstacle, you must take directed, purposeful, and persistent action. This isn't about frantic flailing. It's about breaking the massive problem down into tiny, manageable pieces and attacking them one by one with creativity and perseverance. Edison didn't just stare at the smoldering ruins. He started making lists, calling associates, and drawing new plans that very day. The action is your response, and it's the one thing you always have control over. If a door is locked, you look for a window. If the window is barred, you start digging a tunnel. You keep moving, adapting, and trying new approaches with the materials you have at hand. The obstacle determines what actions are necessary, and you meet it with relentless effort. Finally, there is will. This is the inner fortitude, the iron resolve that allows you to persist in your action even when there is no guarantee of success. It's the acceptance that you may do everything right and still not achieve the external victory you wanted, but you will have achieved the internal victory of acting with courage and integrity. Will is the fuel that powers you through the long, hard, and often thankless work of turning an obstacle into an advantage. It is the deep-seated belief that the process itself, the act of striving and enduring, is where true strength is built. This combination, clear perception, directed action, and unwavering will, is the alchemy that transforms leaden setbacks into golden opportunities. The beauty of this technique is that it democratizes resilience. You don't need to be a famous inventor or a Roman emperor to use it. You can apply it to the obstacles in your own life right now, that difficult client who is never satisfied. They are not a nuisance, they are your training partner for patience and exceptional service, making you better at your job for all your other clients. A budget cut that forces you to be more resourceful, that's not a limitation, it's a creativity drill, forcing you to innovate and streamline in ways you never would have considered in times of plenty. Even a personal betrayal can be the obstacle that teaches you profound lessons about trust, discernment, and your own inner strength. When you start to look for them, you begin to see that obstacles are not interruptions to your journey. They are the signposts showing you where you need to grow. Building on the powerful idea of transforming obstacles into fuel, we now turn to a technique that serves as the ultimate catalyst for that transformation, a sobering yet strangely liberating practice known as Memento Mori, which is Latin for "remember you must die." This is not a morbid fixation on death or a call to live in fear. For the Stoics, it was the exact opposite, a vital tool to jolt yourself into fully appreciating life, to strip away all pretense and procrastination, and to instantly clarify what is truly important. It is the ultimate perspective shifter, the final judge that weighs the value of your actions and asks, if your time is limited, and it is this how you choose to spend it? The Stoic philosophers were not shy about this practice. Seneca wrote extensively about it, urging his readers to live each day as if it were their last, not in a frantic, hedonistic way, but with a profound sense of purpose and presence. He argued that we are all dying every day. The difference between today and the day of your actual death is merely one of number. He wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." We fear loss and hardship as if we are fragile beings, yet we postpone our dreams and waste our hours as if we have an infinite supply of them. Memento Mori is the cold water thrown on the face of that complacency. Marcus Aurelius, too, ended his days with this reflection, writing to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He used the awareness of his own end to ensure that his actions as emperor were aligned with virtue, not ego, because the clock was always ticking. The power of this practice lies in its ability to instantly dissolve trivial concerns. That petty argument you had, that resentment you're holding onto, that project you're too afraid to start, how do they look in the light of your own mortality? They shrink to their proper insignificance. Suddenly, the only things that remain are love, connection, virtue, and the work that truly matters to you. It creates a beautiful, urgent pressure to act now, to forgive now, to create now, to tell people you love them now. It's the reason why many people who have faced a near-death experience report a radical shift in their priorities, feeling more alive than ever before. Memento Mori allows you to access that clarity without having to face an actual crisis. To make this a daily practice, the Stoics and many throughout history have used physical reminders. The ancient Romans were known to keep a skull on their desk or wear rings engraved with Memento Mori imagery. During victorious military parades, a slave would stand behind the general as he rode through the streets, whispering in his ear, "Respice post te." Hominum te memento, which translates to "look behind you, remember you are but a man." This was to prevent the intoxication of success and fame, to keep the leader grounded in the reality of his human fragility. You don't need a literal skull, though some modern Stoics do keep a small replica on their desk. Your reminder can be as simple as a specific piece of jewelry you wear, a note on your bathroom mirror, or even a recurring alert on your phone that goes off once a day with the simple message, Memento Mori. When that reminder goes off, don't just dismiss it. Pause for just 10 seconds and ask yourself a few questions. If today were my last, would I be proud of how I spent it? Am I harboring any ill will that is not worth carrying to my grave? Is there something I am putting off that I would desperately wish I had done? This isn't meant to induce anxiety, it's designed to induce alignment. It gently but firmly pulls you back from autopilot and places you back in the driver's seat of your own life. It is the practice that makes all the other Stoic techniques snap into focus because it answers the question, why? Why bother trying to control only what you can? Why practice negative visualization? Why love your fate? Because your time to practice anything at all is precious and finite. This awareness doesn't diminish your life. It gives it weight, meaning, and an intensity that can only come from knowing the hourglass is emptying, grain by irreplaceable grain. It is the key to living not a long life, but a wide and deep one, filled with purpose and free from the regret of postponed living. Now, after contemplating the finite nature of our time, we come to a technique that may seem counterintuitive but is incredibly practical for building the mental muscle to use that time well. This is the practice of voluntary discomfort. The premise is simple yet profound. You deliberately and temporarily choose to experience minor hardships like taking a cold shower, skipping a meal, or sleeping on a harder surface, in order to inoculate yourself against the fear and suffering of involuntary hardships when they inevitably arrive. It's like a vaccine for the soul. You expose yourself to a small, controlled dose of difficulty to build antibodies against future pain. The Stoics believed that by voluntarily stepping into discomfort, you prove to yourself that you can handle it, thereby robbing future adversities of their power to shock or control you. No one embodied this principle more than Cato the Younger, the staunchly principled Roman statesman who was a living model of Stoic virtue. Cato was known for his almost extreme austerity, even though he was born into immense wealth and privilege. He would often walk through Rome barefoot and wearing nothing under his toga, regardless of the weather. He ate simple, plain food, and he trained himself to endure heat and cold without complaint. He didn't do this because he enjoyed suffering or to show off. He did it as a form of spiritual training. By willingly embracing what others avoided, he was ensuring that fortune could never threaten him with anything he hadn't already willingly faced and conquered. If he lost his wealth, he was already accustomed to living without it. If he was thrown into prison, he had already practiced being uncomfortable. His peace of mind became completely untouchable because it was not dependent on external comforts. The goal of voluntary discomfort is not to punish yourself or to live a life of misery. It is to achieve a state of profound confidence and freedom, when you know you can handle cold, hunger, or fatigue because you've chosen to experience them on your own terms. The potential for those things to disrupt your peace in the future vanishes. A power outage that leaves you without heat becomes a minor inconvenience rather than a crisis. A busy day that forces you to miss lunch is met with a shrug rather than debilitating hunger pains. You break the chain of dependency that ties your happiness to perfect conditions, and you discover a deep, abiding sense of self-reliance that cannot be shaken by life's inevitable fluctuations. Starting this practice is far easier than you might think, and it's best approached gradually. You don't need to start by sleeping on a stone floor in the middle of winter. Begin with small, manageable challenges that you can easily incorporate into your existing routine. A powerful and accessible starting point is with something as simple as a morning shower. For the last 30 to 60 seconds of your shower, turn the dial all the way to cold. Stay under the water and simply observe your reaction. Your initial instinct will be to tense up, to gasp, to want to escape. Your mind will scream that this is unbearable. Your practice is to stay, breathe deeply into the discomfort, observe the sensations without judgment. You are not trying to enjoy it, you are simply practicing the act of enduring it calmly. After you step out, you'll feel an incredible surge of energy and, more importantly, the quiet pride of having mastered an impulse. You chose discomfort and you survived. You are stronger than your avoidance. From there, you can explore other small exercises in self-denial. Skip dessert one night and simply sit with the minor craving. Choose to walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Leave your phone at home when you go out for a coffee and just sit with your own thoughts for 15 minutes. Each of these small acts is a repetition in the gym of your mind, strengthening your willpower and your ability to choose your response rather than being a slave to your desires for comfort and convenience. The key is to frame these acts not as deprivations but as investments in your future resilience. You are building a savings account of fortitude that you can draw upon when life forces a withdrawal. This practice directly prepares you for the larger techniques we've discussed. It makes the concept of Amor Fati, loving your fate, tangible. When you voluntarily embrace a cold shower, you are, in a small way, learning to love that specific, uncomfortable fate. You are proving to yourself that you can not only bear what is necessary, but that you can proactively seek it out for your own betterment. This is how you build an unbreakable frame from the ground up, one small, voluntary challenge at a time. Having established the importance of voluntary discomfort to build resilience, we now turn to a technique that allows you to access that strength in the heat of the moment, precisely when you need it most. This is the Stoic Pause, a powerful practice of creating a deliberate space between a triggering event and your response to it. It is the ultimate antidote to reactive, emotional decision-making, and it draws directly from the writings of Seneca, particularly his profound work on anger. He observed that anger, and indeed all our most damaging emotional reactions, are not instantaneous. They are a process that begins with a first spark, an initial impression that something unjust or harmful has occurred. It is in that fleeting moment before the spark can catch and erupt into a full-blown fire that we have the power to intervene. The Stoic Pause is that intervention. Seneca described anger as a form of temporary madness, a madness that we willingly surrender to when we fail to check its initial impulse. He wrote that the greatest remedy for anger is delay, to simply tell yourself, wait. This is not about suppressing emotion, it's about refusing to be ruled by it. He suggested that the first impression, the feeling of being wronged, is involuntary. We cannot stop that initial flutter in the stomach, the surge of adrenaline, but what happens next is entirely within our control. We grant that first impression permission to become a full-blown judgment, and then we act on that judgment, often with devastating consequences. The pause is the act of revoking that automatic permission. It is you, your rational mind, reasserting command over the ship before the storm of emotion can dash it against the rocks. To make this practical, let's break down a simple, four-step framework you can apply the very next time you feel that familiar heat rise to your face. The first step is to pause. This is the most critical and physical part of the practice. When your boss sends a critical email, when your partner says something that feels like a personal attack, when another driver cuts you off, your immediate biological imperative is to react. Your body is preparing for a fight. Your training is to do the exact opposite, to freeze. Don't move. If you're standing, stay standing. If you're holding something, don't slam it down. This physical stillness is the first signal to your nervous system that a different protocol is in effect. It creates the container for everything that follows. The second step is to breathe. This is not just a cliché, it is a direct physiological intervention. Taking one, or better yet, 3 deep, slow breaths activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and digestion, and begins to counter the fight or flight response that has been triggered. The oxygen helps clear your mind, and the simple, rhythmic act gives your brain a neutral task to focus on instead of feeding the emotional narrative. This breath is a bridge from reactivity to responsiveness. It buys you the precious seconds you need to engage the next most important step. Step 3 is to assess control. This is where you directly apply the bedrock Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control. In the space created by your pause and your breath, you ask yourself a razor-sharp question. What in this exact situation is truly within my control? The other person's words, their opinion, the traffic, no. Your control lies solely in your own judgment of the event and your subsequent action. You cannot control the critical email, but you can control how you interpret it and how you choose to reply. You cannot control your partner's comment, but you can control whether you receive it as an attack or as a poorly expressed concern. You cannot control the reckless driver, but you can control your own hands on the wheel and your decision to let them go without engaging. This moment of assessment is the great diffuser. It redirects your energy from trying to change the unchangeable to mastering the one thing you can always command, yourself. Finally, and only after completing the first 3 steps, you respond. Notice the word is not react. A reaction is automatic, emotional, and often regrettable. A response is chosen, measured, and virtuous. From that place of calm assessment, you can now decide on a course of action that aligns with your character and your goals. Maybe the response is to draft a reply to that email, but save it as a draft to review again in an hour. Maybe it's to ask your partner a clarifying question instead of firing back an accusation. Maybe it's to simply take your foot off the gas and create more space between your car and the one ahead. The response is now a tool, not a weapon. It is an expression of your agency rather than a surrender to your impulses. Consider a real-world example. You're in a high-stakes meeting and a colleague publicly dismisses your idea, calling it uninformed. The first spark flies, your face flushes, your heart pounds. The old script screams to defend yourself, to attack their idea in return, to prove you're smarter. This is where you enact the pause. You stop yourself from speaking immediately. You take a slow, subtle breath under the table. You assess. You cannot control their words or their rudeness. You can only control your composure and your next words. From that calm center, you can now choose a response that maintains your frame. Perhaps you say, I appreciate the feedback. Could you help me understand which specific part you see as uninformed so I can develop it further? This response is disarming, professional, and virtuous. It demonstrates strength, not weakness. It controls the room by controlling yourself. The Stoic pause transforms a potential conflict into an opportunity to demonstrate unshakable character. It is the practical application of philosophy in real time, the moment where theory meets the road and proves its worth. Following directly from the practice of the Stoic pause, which allows you to reclaim control in heated moments, we now turn to a technique that actively builds a positive and resilient foundation, making those pauses even more effective. This is the 10th technique, practicing gratitude. While modern positive psychology has rightly celebrated gratitude as a cornerstone of well-being, the Stoics were its original architects, designing it not as a feel-good exercise, but as a formidable tool for fortifying the mind against adversity. For them, gratitude was a profound act of reason, a conscious recalibration of perspective that actively counters our brain's innate negativity bias. It is the practice of systematically shifting your attention from what you lack to the abundance that is already present, thereby building a frame of contentment that external circumstances cannot easily shake. No one exemplified this better than Marcus Aurelius. In the opening of his meditations, he penned a lengthy and detailed gratitude list, but not in the way we might think of it today. He didn't just list things he was happy to have. He specifically acknowledged the people in his life, from his grandfather and father to his mentors and even the gods, and the specific virtues he learned from them. He expressed gratitude for his mother's piety and her habit of eating plain food. He was thankful to his governor for teaching him to have no taste for building public works projects just to make a name for himself. He even expressed thanks for the fact that he didn't waste too much time on poetry or rhetoric. This wasn't a simple thank you note. It was a deep, philosophical exercise in recognizing that every aspect of his character, both his strengths and the weaknesses he avoided, was a gift from others and from fate itself. He was building his unbreakable frame by consciously acknowledging the materials that had already been provided for its construction. The Stoic rationale for gratitude is powerfully linked to the practices we've already covered. It is the positive counterpart to negative visualization. Premeditatio malorum has you imagine losing what you have to appreciate it. Gratitude has you appreciate what you have so that you are psychologically prepared should you ever lose it. It is the emotional engine of Amor Fati, the love of fate. It is far easier to love your fate when you are actively looking for and acknowledging the good within it. Even in the darkest situations, the practice of finding something to be grateful for, a lesson learned, a moment of kindness, the simple fact that you have the strength to endure becomes an act of defiance against despair. It is you asserting that while you may not control the event, you absolutely control the meaning you assign to it. Modern science has since caught up to this ancient wisdom, with a wealth of research from positive psychology confirming that a regular gratitude practice can significantly reduce stress and anxiety, improve sleep, and increase overall life satisfaction. Neurologically, it strengthens neural pathways associated with empathy and positive recall, essentially training your brain to scan for good news instead of bad. This isn't just fluffy self-help, it's a practical rewiring of your perception that makes you more resilient. A mind that is trained to see blessings is a mind that is less easily surprised or defeated by misfortune. Your frame becomes unbreakable because it is built on a foundation of acknowledged abundance, not perceived scarcity. To cultivate this mindset, you can incorporate simple yet powerful exercises into your daily routine. The most direct method is the nightly gratitude journal, a practice that fits seamlessly with the Stoic journaling we discussed earlier. Instead of just reviewing your actions, take 5 minutes before bed to write down 3 to 5 specific things you are grateful for that day. The key is to move beyond vague generalities like, "I'm grateful for my family." Drill down into the specifics. "I'm grateful for the way my partner made me laugh when I was stressed about work." "I'm grateful for the warmth of the sun on my face during my walk." "I'm grateful for the quiet 10 minutes I had to drink my coffee this morning." This specificity forces you to actively recall and relive those positive moments, deepening their emotional impact and strengthening the neural pathways. Another powerful ritual is a morning gratitude meditation. Before you even check your phone, sit quietly for a few minutes and mentally list the things you appreciate. Start with the most fundamental, often overlooked gifts: the air in your lungs, the roof over your head, the functioning of your senses. This grounds you in a state of abundance before the demands and potential irritations of the day even begin. It sets a filter of appreciation that can completely change how you perceive challenges. A traffic jam becomes a minor inconvenience against the backdrop of gratitude for having a car and a job to drive to. A difficult work project becomes an opportunity you're grateful to have, compared to the alternative of unemployment. The ultimate Stoic gratitude challenge, however, is to extend this practice to the obstacles themselves. This is where it merges completely with Amor Fati. Can you find something to be genuinely grateful for within a setback? Can you be thankful for a criticism because it revealed a blind spot? Can you appreciate a financial hiccup for teaching you resourcefulness? This doesn't mean pretending the difficulty doesn't hurt. It means honoring the growth it provokes. By seeking the gift in every situation, you transform your entire experience of life from one of lack and resistance to one of continuous receipt and growth. You realize that the world is constantly offering you lessons and blessings, and a grateful heart is the key that unlocks them all. Now, after building that foundation of gratitude and inner resilience, we turn to a more imaginative but profoundly effective technique for making difficult decisions and navigating moral gray areas. This is the contemplation of the sage, a practice where you mentally invoke an idealized figure of perfect wisdom and virtue to act as your inner counsel. The Stoics didn't see this as a mystical exercise, but as a practical thinking tool. By projecting your thoughts and dilemmas onto a mental model of unwavering integrity, you can cut through your own biases, fears, and selfish desires to see the clearest, most virtuous path forward. You are essentially creating a personal board of directors for your conscience, chaired by the wisest person you can imagine. The most common figure the Stoics themselves looked to was Socrates, though they also used historical exemplars like Cato the Younger or even mythical heroes like Hercules. Socrates was the ultimate model because his entire life was a testament to living by principle, even when it cost him everything. He famously chose to drink the hemlock and accept a death sentence rather than compromise his philosophical mission or flee Athens in dishonor. When faced with a tough choice, a Stoic would ask, what would Socrates do? But the key is to go beyond a simple, superficial question. You must engage in a full mental dialogue. You imagine sitting down with this sage and explaining your situation in detail, your temptations, your fears, your justifications. Then you truly listen to what this figure of perfect reason and virtue would advise. Would Socrates counsel you to take the easy path that slightly compromises your honesty? Would he approve of your harsh reaction to a colleague, or would he suggest a more measured, understanding response? This practice forces you to argue your case before the highest court, and often you'll find your own arguments wanting. To make this work for you, it's most effective to create your own personal sage. This doesn't have to be a historical philosopher. It can be a composite character drawn from the best qualities of people you admire, real or fictional. Perhaps it's a grandparent known for their boundless kindness, a fictional leader like Captain Picard from Star Trek, known for his wisdom and principle, or a blend of several mentors. The important thing is to define their characteristics clearly. Is your sage patient, courageous, incredibly just, impartial, infinitely calm? Write these traits down. Give this mental model a name. The more vividly you can imagine this figure, the more effectively they can serve as your guide. Let's walk through how you'd use this in a real scenario. Imagine you're considering leaving a stable job to start your own business, but you're paralyzed by fear of failure. Your mind is a whirlwind of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. This is the moment to convene your inner counsel. Close your eyes and bring your sage to mind. See them sitting across from you. Now explain your dilemma to them. Lay out all your fears. I'm afraid I'll run out of money. I'm afraid people will think I'm a fool if I fail. I'm afraid of the uncertainty. Now truly listen to their response. A sage rooted in Stoic virtue would not dismiss your fears, but they would reframe them. They might say, your fear of financial loss is a concern for an external outside your complete control. Your effort and your courage, however, are within your control. Is inaction a more virtuous choice than striving for something you believe in? Does your potential contribution to the world through this business outweigh the temporary comfort of your current position? And if you were to fail, would that not simply be another obstacle to be met with resilience and learning? The sage's advice will always point you back toward courage, action, and a focus on what you can control, cutting through the noise of external validation and fear. This practice is incredibly powerful because it externalizes your own highest wisdom. Often, we know the right thing to do, but that knowledge is muffled by louder, more primal emotions like fear or greed. The sage is a personification of your own rational mind, your hegemonicon as the Stoics called it. By giving it a face and a voice, you make it easier to access, especially under pressure. It becomes a kind of psychological trick to bypass your ego and your immediate impulses. You're no longer just arguing with yourself, you're seeking counsel from a wiser being. Over time, this habit reshapes your own thinking patterns. You start to internalize the Sage's voice, and your first instinct in a challenging situation becomes to consider what is principled and wise, not what is easy or self-serving. You build a stronger frame because your decisions are no longer based on fleeting emotions, but are consistently guided by an unwavering moral compass that you carry within you at all times. This brings us to a critical pivot in how we approach our goals and measure our success, a shift the Stoics knew was essential for maintaining peace and perseverance. This is the 12th technique, focusing on process over outcome. At its heart, this is about redirecting your entire sense of satisfaction and self-worth from the unpredictable and often fickle results of your actions to the one thing you can always command, the quality of your effort itself. It's the understanding that while outcomes are influenced by countless external factors, luck, timing, other people's decisions, your commitment to the process is yours and yours alone. This isn't about abandoning ambition or not caring about results. It's about tying your fulfillment to the one part of the equation that you truly own, thereby building a consistent, anxiety-free drive that can withstand any setback. We can see this principle play out with immense clarity in the world of high-performance sports. Consider a professional basketball player stepping up to the free throw line with 1 second left on the clock and their team down by 1 point. The outcome, whether the ball goes in or not, is massive. It means winning or losing the championship, national glory or heartbreak. If the player's mind is locked on that outcome, the pressure becomes unbearable. Their muscles tense, their focus fragments, and their carefully honed technique crumbles under the weight of expectation. Now consider the Stoic player. Their entire focus is not on the scoreboard or the cheering crowd, but on their process. They have taken 10,000 free throws in practice. Their only job in this moment is to replicate their perfect routine process. Align their feet, steady their breathing, focus on the rim, and execute their shooting motion with flawless form. The ball may go in or it may bounce out, but if they executed their process correctly, they have succeeded in the only thing they could control. They can walk off the court with their head held high, regardless of the outcome, because their worth was not tied to that single bounce of the ball. This is how athletes avoid being broken by pressure. They worship the grind, not the trophy. This mindset translates perfectly into the world of business and creative work. An entrepreneur launching a new startup has no guaranteed control over whether the market will embrace their product. They can't force customers to buy. If they tie their self-esteem and mental health to hitting a specific revenue target in the first year, they are setting themselves up for potential anguish. The Stoic entrepreneur, however, focuses on their process-oriented goals, making 50 sales calls per week, continuously iterating on the product based on user feedback, writing one valuable blog post every day to build an audience, and treating every client with exceptional integrity. These are actions fully within their control. They can find daily satisfaction in checking these boxes, knowing that this consistent, high-quality effort is the only reliable path to long-term success. Even if the venture ultimately fails, they can look back without regret because they know they gave it their absolute best shot. They built their character and their skills in the process, assets that no market crash can ever take away. The psychological benefit of this focus is the near-total elimination of performance anxiety. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty, and outcomes are the epitome of uncertainty. When you shift your attention to the process, you are anchoring yourself in the present moment in a series of concrete, manageable actions. You aren't worrying about the future, you are building it one deliberate brick at a time. This creates a state of flow where you are fully immersed in the task at hand, and the noise of what might be simply falls away. Your motivation becomes intrinsic. You are driven by the integrity of your effort rather than the carrot of a reward or the stick of a potential failure. This makes you incredibly consistent because your ability to show up and do good work is no longer contingent on whether you're feeling inspired or whether you received positive feedback yesterday. You show up because that's who you are and what you do. To implement this, you need to redefine your daily goals. Instead of setting outcome-based goals like lose 10 pounds or get a promotion, set process-based goals. Lose 10 pounds is an outcome that can be derailed by 100 factors outside your control. It leads to frustration and quitting when the scale doesn't move. A process goal would be, I will eat a protein-rich breakfast every day this week, and I will complete 3 45-minute weight training sessions. These are binary. You either did them or you didn't. You can succeed at these every single day, building a chain of successes that fuels your momentum. Similarly, instead of get a promotion, your process goals could be, I will arrive 10 minutes early every day to prepare, and I will proactively ask for one new responsibility each week. You can control these actions completely. This daily focus on the process builds the habits that make the desired outcome not just more likely, but almost inevitable. You stop staring at the mountain peak and instead fall in love with the rhythm of each step, trusting that the climb itself is what will make you strong enough to reach the top. In a world that often feels fractious and divided, the Stoics offered a powerful antidote that not only preserves our own peace but also heals our connections with others. This is the 13th technique, practicing empathy and understanding. At first glance, empathy might seem like a soft skill, separate from the hard-edged mental toughness we've been discussing. But for the Stoics, it was an absolutely essential component of an unbreakable frame. Why? Because much of our emotional turmoil, our anger, our resentment, our frustration, is directly generated by our failure to understand why other people act the way they do. When we misinterpret their actions as personal attacks or evidence of malice, we hand them the keys to our inner peace. Stoic empathy is the practice of taking those keys back. Marcus Aurelius, who dealt with backstabbing politicians, incompetent subordinates, and outright enemies on a daily basis, constantly reminded himself of this in his private journal. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." This wasn't a cynical rant, it was a profound exercise in preemptive empathy. He was preparing himself to meet the flaws of humanity, not with outrage, but with a calm, almost clinical understanding. He believed that no one consciously chooses evil, they merely choose what they mistakenly believe to be good. A person who lies does so because they believe lying will benefit them in some way. A person who is rude is likely acting out of their own pain, insecurity, or ignorance. Seeing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does drain it of its personal sting and its power to provoke you into a reactive anger. You realize their behavior is not really about you, it's about their own flawed judgment and internal struggles. This perspective is incredibly liberating. Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off aggressively. The immediate default reaction is to take it personally. How dare they? What a jerk. This interpretation triggers a cascade of anger and stress hormones. Now apply the Stoic lens. Instead of assuming malice, you assume ignorance or internal struggle. Maybe that driver is not an entitled monster, but a terrified father rushing to the hospital because his child is sick. Maybe they're a young driver who simply didn't see you and made a clumsy error. Maybe they're just having the worst day of their life and their emotional resources are completely depleted. You don't know their story. By choosing the most charitable interpretation possible, you are not doing them a favor, you are doing yourself the ultimate favor. You are choosing the narrative that allows you to maintain your calm and let the incident roll off you without a second thought. Your heart rate stays steady, your mood remains intact, and you've protected your precious energy for things that actually matter. To put this into daily practice, two specific techniques are invaluable. The first is the ancient art of reflective listening, often summarized as seek first to understand, then to be understood. In any heated conversation, your immediate goal should not be to win the argument or even to respond, but to fully comprehend the other person's perspective so completely that you can articulate it back to them to their satisfaction. This forces you to truly step into their shoes and see the world through their eyes, which is the very essence of empathy. In a disagreement with your partner, instead of planning your rebuttal while they talk, try saying, "So if I'm hearing you correctly, you feel overwhelmed because X and Y happened, and that made you think I wasn't listening. Is that right?" This simple act of reflection does three things. It ensures you actually understand their point. It validates their feelings by showing you are making a sincere effort to hear them, and it almost instantly de-escalates the emotional temperature. It transforms a confrontation into a collaboration. The second technique is to consciously assume good intent. Make it a default setting in your mind that people are generally not trying to cause harm. When you receive a terse email from a colleague, instead of reading it as passive-aggressive hostility, assume it was sent in a hurry between meetings. If a friend forgets your birthday, assume it was a simple oversight in a busy life rather than a sign of dwindling affection. This is not about being naive, it's about being strategic. You are choosing the interpretation that causes you the least internal disturbance and leaves the most room for a positive relationship. If you are wrong and their intent was truly malicious, you will likely discover that soon enough through their repeated actions. But 99 times out of 100, you will have avoided unnecessary conflict and preserved your own equanimity for no cost. Cultivating this deep empathy fundamentally strengthens your emotional stability because it decouples your internal state from the external behavior of others. Their actions become data points to be understood, not personal affronts to be avenged. You begin to see every difficult person as a unique training partner sent to develop your patience, your compassion, and your understanding. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. Stoic empathy is not permissiveness. You can still set firm boundaries and hold people accountable for their actions. But you do so from a place of calm reason, not reactive anger. You can dismiss someone from your life or end a business relationship with clarity and resolve, not because you hate them, but because you understand their nature is incompatible with your well-being. This is the mark of a truly unbreakable frame. The ability to engage with the world's chaos, including the flaws of other people, with profound understanding and undisturbed peace, knowing that their actions reflect their inner world, not your worth. Now we arrive at one of the most advanced and transformative Stoic practices, a technique that goes straight to the source of nearly all our emotional turmoil. This is Technique 14, the discipline of assent. Introduced primarily by the philosopher Epictetus, this discipline is about mastering the very first spark of a thought or feeling before it can erupt into a full-blown, often destructive emotion. It is the art of withholding your automatic agreement, your assent, from any initial impression that enters your mind until you have soberly evaluated it against the light of reason. Epictetus taught that between any external event and our emotional response, there is a critical, albeit fleeting, space. In that space lies our power to choose our reaction and thus our freedom. Most people never even notice this space. They are like puppets jerked around by every passing impression. The Stoic, through the discipline of assent, learns to stand firmly in that space and reclaim their autonomy. Epictetus used a powerful metaphor to explain this. He said that our impressions, the initial thoughts and perceptions that pop into our heads, are like visitors knocking at the door of our mind. Our automatic judgments and emotional reactions are the householder who flings the door open immediately and invites the visitor in for dinner without checking to see who it is or what they want. The discipline of assent teaches you to be the wise householder who hears the knock, but instead of opening the door, they first go to the peephole. They pause to ask, who is it? Is this impression true? Is it helpful? Is it something within my control? Only after this moment of examination do they decide whether to let the visitor in or to politely but firmly send them on their way. This simple pause is the difference between a mind at the mercy of the world and a mind that is its own master. To see how this works in practice, let's take a common scenario: receiving criticism. Imagine you've just presented a project at work, and afterward a colleague pulls you aside and says, "That was a pretty weak presentation. I'm not sure the clients were convinced." The immediate, involuntary impression that flashes into your mind is a feeling of heat, a sinking in your stomach, and a thought like, "He's right, I failed. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent." This is the knock at the door. The untrained mind instantly flings the door open, assenting completely to that impression. It accepts the thought, "I am a failure," as an unquestionable fact. This assent triggers the full emotional cascade: shame, anger, defensiveness, and anxiety that can ruin your entire day. Now let's replay that scenario with the discipline of assent. The same event occurs, the same critical comment is made, the same initial impression arises, that sinking feeling and the thought, "He's right. I failed," but this time you recognize this for what it is. Just an initial impression, a raw piece of data, not yet a truth. You pause, you go to the peephole. You interrogate the impression, you ask Epictetus's questions. Is this within my control? Is this absolutely true? You realize that your colleague's opinion is not within your control. You also realize that their single comment is not an objective verdict on your entire worth or ability. It is one person's perspective. Perhaps they had a bad morning. Perhaps they misunderstood a key point. Perhaps their feedback, though poorly delivered, contains a tiny kernel of useful truth you can extract. By withholding your immediate assent from the catastrophic interpretation, you prevent the emotional hurricane from ever forming. You can now choose a calm, measured response. You might say, "I appreciate the feedback. What specifically did you think was weak?" This shifts the interaction from an emotional battlefield to a problem-solving discussion, all because you mastered that split-second space between impression and assent. Another powerful application is in dealing with rumors or gossip. Someone tells you a piece of shocking news about a friend. The immediate impression is one of betrayal or judgment. The undisciplined mind immediately assents, gets angry, and spreads the rumor further. The disciplined mind withholds assent. It says, "This is an unverified claim. I do not know the full story. It is not within my control what others say or do, but it is within my control to not spread unconfirmed information and to reserve judgment until I have facts." This pause protects you from unnecessary drama, preserves your relationships, and maintains your inner peace. Mastering this discipline requires constant, vigilant practice. It is the mental equivalent of building a new muscle. Start by simply becoming an observer of your own thoughts. Throughout your day, notice those initial impressions as they arise: the irritation at a slow driver, the flash of envy at a friend's success, the worry about a future event. Don't try to stop them, just label them. There is an impression of irritation. This act of naming it creates the very space you need. Then, gently apply reason. Ask, is this thing I'm reacting to within my control? Is my initial judgment about it absolutely true, or is it just one possible interpretation? Over time, this process becomes faster and more automatic. You begin to catch impressions earlier and earlier until you can intercept them before they ever trigger a damaging emotional response. The discipline of assent is not about becoming emotionless. It is about ensuring your emotions are proportionate and rational responses to reality, rather than irrational reactions to your own unexamined thoughts. It is the ultimate tool for safeguarding your inner citadel, ensuring that nothing enters without your conscious permission. This brings us to one of the most profound and encompassing Stoic principles, a concept that serves as the ultimate blueprint for an unbreakable frame. This is Technique 15, living in accordance with nature. At its core, this is the Stoic ideal of a life well lived, a harmonious existence achieved by aligning our individual human nature, our unique gift of reason, with the greater rational nature of the universe itself. For the Stoics, the cosmos was not a chaotic, random accident. It was a beautifully ordered, intelligent, and interconnected system, a single living organism they called the Logos. To live in accordance with nature meant to understand your place within this vast whole and to play your part willingly and virtuously, using your reason to navigate the world as it is, not as you might wish it to be. This alignment operates on two simultaneous levels, and understanding both is key. The first is about living in accordance with your own human nature. The Stoics believed that what separates us from other animals is our capacity for rational thought, our ability to act with justice, courage, temperance, and wisdom. Therefore, to act against these virtues, to be ruled by irrational passions like rage, envy, or greed, to be dishonest or cowardly, is to live contrary to your own essential nature. It's like a bird trying to live underwater or a fish trying to fly. It creates a constant internal state of friction and dissatisfaction. You are working against your own design. When you choose reason over impulse, justice over selfishness, and courage over fear, you are fulfilling your human purpose. You are, in the words of the Stoic philosopher Hierocles, moving from the outer circles of your identity, your possessions, your status, your nationality toward the inner citadel of your character, the one thing that is truly and inalienably you. The second, grander level is about aligning with universal nature. This means accepting the events of the world with a sense of trust and purpose, even when they are difficult or painful. It is the practical application of Amor Fati on a cosmic scale. The Stoics used the powerful metaphor of a dog tied to a cart. The cart is moving forward, representing fate or the unfolding of the universe. The dog has two choices. It can strain against the rope, fighting and choking the entire way, or it can choose to trot along willingly alongside the cart. The destination is the same regardless. The only difference is the amount of needless suffering the dog endures. To live in accordance with universal nature is to be the dog that trots willingly. It is to accept the weather, the actions of others, the twists of fortune, and even our own mortality, not as personal insults or random cruelties, but as integral parts of a vast, beautiful, and rational whole that we may not fully comprehend but can choose to trust. In our modern world, this ancient philosophy offers incredibly practical and grounding interpretations that can help us feel connected and purposeful. One powerful way is through the lens of sustainable living and environmental mindfulness. The Stoic call to see ourselves as part of an interconnected whole resonates deeply with ecological principles. When you make a conscious choice to reduce waste, to consume less, or to support sustainable practices, you are not just going green, you are actively performing an act of alignment. You are acknowledging that your well-being is intrinsically tied to the health of the planet, your broader community. You are using your reason to make choices that benefit the whole system of which you are a single part. This transforms mundane acts like recycling or choosing to walk instead of drive from chores into small, daily rituals of Stoic virtue, exercises in justice and responsibility toward the universal nature that sustains you. Another modern application is in crafting mindful routines that honor your human nature. Universal nature operates with rhythms, the cycle of day and night, the changing of the seasons. Our modern, always-on, artificially lit world often pulls us completely out of sync with these natural rhythms, leading to stress, anxiety, and a feeling of being ungrounded. Living in accordance with nature can be as simple as creating a daily routine that respects these cycles, waking up with the sun, or at least at a consistent early hour to capture the energy of the morning. Prioritizing deep, focused work during your natural peak hours of mental clarity, and allowing for true rest and recovery in the evening, perhaps by dimming lights and disconnecting from screens. This isn't just productivity hack, it's a way of using your reason to design a life that works with your biological and cosmic environment, rather than constantly fighting against it. You are, in a sense, tuning your personal instrument to the frequency of the universe, and the result is a profound sense of ease and belonging. Ultimately, this practice is about finding your role and playing it well. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this, writing, "No longer talk at all about the kind of man that a good man ought to be, but be one." He saw himself as an actor on a stage, and his duty was to play the role of the emperor, with all its burdens and privileges, to the best of his ability, for as long as the playwright, the universe required him to be in that part. Your role might be a parent, a teacher, an engineer, a friend. Living in accordance with nature means asking, what does this role, performed with excellence and virtue, require of me right now? And then doing it without complaint or desire for a different part. This mindset eradicates resentment and feelings of being unfairly burdened. It replaces them with a deep, quiet sense of purpose. You are no longer just going through the motions of your life. You are performing a vital, unique function within the grand, beautiful system of the whole. You are rooted, purposeful, and unshakable because you know you are exactly where you are meant to be, doing exactly what you are meant to do. Imagine having a pocket-sized mentor, a voice of ancient wisdom you could call upon at a moment's notice to steady your nerves, reframe a crisis, or recenter your focus. This is the power of Technique 16, using maxims and quotes. The Stoics themselves were masters of the pithy, memorable phrase, crafting and repeating these mental anchors to crystallize complex principles into actionable reminders. Think of these not as mere inspirational posters, but as cognitive tools, sharp, portable, and ready to be deployed the instant your equanimity is tested. By carefully curating a personal arsenal of Stoic quotes, you essentially build a psychological first aid kit for your mind, one that allows you to instantly access centuries of distilled wisdom when you need it most. The effectiveness of this practice lies in the way these maxims bypass our overthinking emotional mind and speak directly to our rational core. In a moment of panic or anger, you don't have time to reread a chapter of Meditations. But you do have time to recall a single, powerful line. For instance, when you feel yourself getting overwhelmed by a project's potential for failure, Seneca's voice can cut through the noise. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. This 7-word phrase is a complete course in negative visualization. It instantly pulls you out of catastrophic future tripping and forces you to confront the actual, manageable present moment. Or when you're fixating on a colleague's negative opinion, Epictetus offers the ultimate shield. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This is the dichotomy of control in its most potent, abbreviated form, a reminder that shifts your focus from the unchangeable action to your entirely changeable response. To build your own toolkit, start by selecting a handful of quotes that resonate deeply with your specific challenges. Don't just collect dozens, choose a few that feel like they were written for you. Write them down on index cards, save them in a note on your phone, or even set them as rotating lock screens. The key is to make them visible and to actually spend time with them. Don't just read them, internalize them. Reflect on what each one means in the context of your own life. For Marcus Aurelius, a powerful maxim to recall during times of irritation is his simple command. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. This isn't cynical, it's strategic premeditation, preparing your mind to meet human folly with patience rather than surprise and outrage. The real magic happens when you move from passive collection to active application. This means doing the work of connecting specific quotes to specific scenarios you might face. Create mental triggers. If you know you have a difficult conversation coming up, your go-to phrase might be another from Marcus. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. This primes you to respond with integrity, not spite. If you're anxious about an uncertain future, you might lean on Seneca's perspective on time. He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. This becomes a command to cease borrowing trouble from a tomorrow that may never arrive. By pre-loading these responses, you are essentially programming your mind to default to Stoic wisdom under pressure, much like a pilot relies on trained protocols in an emergency. Ultimately, this practice transforms abstract philosophy into a living, breathing dialogue. These maxims become the voice of your inner sage, a constant companion whispering perspective into your ear. They are the mental grooves that, through repetition, become the well-worn paths your thoughts travel during times of stress. Each time you successfully use a quote to navigate a challenge, you reinforce its power and deepen your own resilience. You are not just remembering words, you are enacting a principle, building the unbreakable frame one wise reminder at a time. After mastering the power of words through maxims, we now explore a technique that champions their absence. This is the 17th Stoic practice, the art of silence. In a world that constantly demands our opinion and rewards loudness, the Stoics understood that true strength often lies not in what you say, but in what you consciously choose not to say. This isn't about being shy or withdrawn. It is a disciplined, strategic use of silence to cultivate self-control, deepen understanding, and project an unshakable calm that no heated argument can penetrate. It is the practice of making your silence more eloquent than any speech could ever be. Seneca wrote extensively on the dangers of a loose tongue and the virtues of restrained speech. He observed that we are given 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we might listen twice as much as we speak. For the Stoics, speaking less was a direct exercise in self-mastery. Every time you feel an impulsive comment rise to your lips, a piece of gossip, a harsh criticism, a needless opinion, and you choose to hold it back, you are performing a repetition in the gym of your willpower. You are proving to yourself that you are not a slave to your every passing thought or emotion. This builds a profound sense of inner strength because you know your actions are chosen, not automatic. Your frame becomes stronger because it is no longer dependent on external validation from being heard. It is fortified by the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have nothing to prove. The strategic power of silence is most evident in moments of potential conflict. Imagine you're in a discussion that is starting to escalate. The other person, fueled by emotion, says something provocative or personally insulting. The natural knee-jerk reaction is to fire back immediately, to defend yourself, to win the point. This is precisely where the art of silence becomes your most powerful tool. Instead of engaging, you simply stop. You consciously choose to say nothing for a few moments. You maintain calm eye contact and just listen. This deliberate silence does several things at once. First, it completely diffuses the other person's emotional charge. It's incredibly difficult to maintain a one-sided argument. Second, it gives you the crucial time to engage your Stoic pause, to assess what is within your control, and to choose a virtuous response rather than a reactive one. Finally, it projects an aura of immense power and composure. Your refusal to be baited into an emotional squabble demonstrates a level of self-control that is far more impressive than any witty retort. You win not by dominating the conversation, but by transcending the need to dominate at all. Beyond conflict, this art is essential for fostering genuine depth and connection. We often feel pressured to fill every conversational lull with noise, offering half-formed thoughts just to avoid the discomfort of quiet. The Stoic approach is the opposite. By being comfortable with silence, you create a space where deeper, more meaningful conversation can emerge. When you are truly listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk, you hear what is actually being said, and you signal to the other person that they are being heard. This builds trust and respect far more effectively than any monologue. In a negotiation, the person who speaks less often holds more power, as they reveal less of their position and force the other side to fill the void, potentially revealing their own weaknesses. In learning, choosing to listen attentively allows you to absorb wisdom rather than simply waiting to interject with your own existing knowledge. To cultivate this art, 2 practical exercises are invaluable. The first is to practice mindful conversation. In your next few interactions, make a conscious effort to let the other person finish their thought completely, and then wait for 2 full seconds before you respond. This small pause alone will transform your interactions, making you a more considerate communicator and giving you the space to formulate more thoughtful responses. The second exercise is to embrace solo reflection. Regularly schedule time for absolute silence. No podcasts, no music, no background noise. Take a walk in nature without your headphones. Sit with your own thoughts for 15 minutes with just a journal. This practice desensitizes you to the discomfort of silence and allows you to become familiar with the sound of your own mind, strengthening your internal frame so that you are no longer dependent on external noise for comfort or validation. In the end, the art of silence teaches you that your power is not measured by the volume of your voice, but by the depth of your calm. It is in the quiet that we hear our own wisdom most clearly, and in that wisdom we find a strength that cannot be shaken. Change is the one constant you can always rely on, a river that never stops flowing, and the 18th technique is about learning not just to accept this truth, but to find profound peace within it. This is the practice of accepting impermanence, a concept deeply woven into Stoic philosophy and heavily influenced by the earlier Greek thinker Heraclitus. It was Heraclitus who famously declared that no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. The Stoics absorbed this wisdom completely, understanding that to fight against the fundamental nature of reality, which is constant flux, is a recipe for endless suffering. Your relationships, your career, your health, your very sense of self, none of these are fixed, solid entities. They are processes always in a state of becoming something else. An unbreakable frame isn't one made of rigid, unmoving steel that shatters under pressure. It's one that is flexible, adaptive, and resilient, like bamboo that bends with the wind but does not break. Heraclitus's philosophy of panta rhei, everything flows, was a direct challenge to the human desire for permanence and stability. He saw the universe not as a collection of static objects, but as a dynamic process of perpetual transformation, where opposing forces create harmony through tension. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, echoed this constantly. Marcus would remind himself that all things are soon changed and either gone or on their way to extinction. He wasn't being morbid, he was grounding himself in the reality of physics. Everything that has a beginning has an end. Every career has a final day. Every relationship, no matter how strong, will eventually change form through distance, disagreement, or death. The beauty of accepting this isn't that it makes you care less. It's that it allows you to care more deeply without the clinging desperation that tries to freeze a moment in time and inevitably leads to pain when that moment passes. Consider a major life transition like an unexpected career shift. Perhaps the industry you've dedicated decades to is being transformed by new technology and your role is becoming obsolete. The natural, untrained reaction is one of terror, resentment, and a desperate attempt to hold onto the past. You might rail against the unfairness, polish your old trophies, and try to force a world that has moved on to conform to your outdated map. This rigid frame will crack under the pressure of progress. Now apply the lens of impermanence. You recognize that your career was never a permanent statue but a chapter in a book. This ending is not a personal failure. It is simply the natural conclusion of that chapter, making space for the next one. This acceptance allows you to pivot with curiosity rather than fear. You can look at the new technological landscape not as a threat, but as a fascinating new language to learn. You can grieve the loss of the old way, certainly, but you do so with the understanding that grief is the price of love for something impermanent, and then you channel that energy into building something new. The flexible frame bends and adapts, finding new opportunities where the rigid one only saw ruin. The same principle applies to our personal relationships. We often enter relationships, especially romantic ones, with a silent, unspoken contract that this person will never change. We fall in love with a version of them and then feel betrayed when they grow, their interests shift, or their needs evolve. We try to lock them into the person they were when we first met. This is a rebellion against impermanence, and it strangles the very life out of love, which requires space to breathe and evolve. Accepting impermanence in love means loving the river, not a single snapshot of it. It means understanding that your partner today is not the same person you met 5 years ago, and you are not the same either. This allows you to approach each day with curiosity, to continually rediscover each other, and to love the process of change itself. It prepares you for the natural transitions, from passionate lovers to dedicated partners, from a couple to parents, from a full house to an empty nest, not as losses to be feared, but as new seasons of a shared life to be experienced together. To truly integrate this into your life, you need practical exercises that move it from an intellectual idea to a lived experience. A powerful place to start is with a simple meditation on decay. Find a quiet moment and bring to mind something you currently possess and value: a new car, a strong and healthy body, a beautiful home. Now trace its journey backward and forward in time. The car was once raw ore in the ground and will one day be a rusted shell in a junkyard. Your body was once the body of a child and will one age weaken and return to the earth. The house was a pile of lumber and will eventually crumble or be torn down. Sit with these thoughts not to create despair, but to create liberation. This practice, directly drawn from Stoic and Buddhist traditions, dissolves the illusion of permanence that we attach to our possessions and even to ourselves. It's not meant to make you stop caring for your things or your health. On the contrary, it can make you care for them more tenderly, with the knowledge that your time with them is limited and precious. Another vital exercise is to consciously introduce small, voluntary changes into your routine. We build our lives around habits and patterns, and these can create a comforting but false sense of stability. To practice adaptability, deliberately break your own patterns, take a different route to work, rearrange the furniture in your living room, try a type of cuisine you've never had. Read a book from a genre you normally avoid. These are small, safe ways to exercise your adaptability muscle. When you feel the internal resistance to the change, the little voice that says, "But I like my usual route," that is the exact moment to lean in. That resistance is the same muscle that screams in terror when a big, involuntary change comes along. By voluntarily practicing with small changes, you teach your nervous system that change is not a threat, but a neutral and often interesting constant. You build a frame that is comfortable with discomfort, that finds excitement in the new, and that understands that security doesn't come from a perfectly predictable life, but from the unshakable confidence that you can handle whatever life brings next, precisely because you know it will all eventually change. Now we turn to a virtue that extends our inner strength outward, shaping not only our character but the very world around us. This is Technique 19, practicing justice and fairness. In the Stoic view, justice is not merely a societal law or an abstract ideal. It is one of the 4 cardinal virtues and a profound personal duty. It represents the application of wisdom, courage, and temperance in our dealings with other people. For the Stoics, your personal integrity is your fortress, and justice is the unshakable foundation upon which that fortress is built. It's about giving everyone their due, not necessarily in a legal sense, but in a human sense, offering respect, fairness, and honesty in every interaction, regardless of who they are or what they can do for you. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps history's most powerful proponent of this idea, constantly reflected on justice in his private writings. He saw his immense authority not as a tool for personal gratification, but as a solemn responsibility to serve the common good. In his meditations, he reminds himself to see all human beings as his kin, sprung from the same divine reason. He writes, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple analogy encapsulates the Stoic view of our interconnectedness. An act that harms the community ultimately harms the individual, and conversely, an act of justice that strengthens the community reinforces your own place within it. His personal practice involved a nightly review not just of his own actions, but of his intentions toward others. He would ask himself if he had been fair in his judgments, if he had listened to both sides of a dispute, and if his decisions had been made for the benefit of those he led, rather than for his own pride or convenience. For him, justice was the daily, practical exercise of power with empathy and reason. So how do we practice this lofty ideal in our own daily lives, where we may not be ruling an empire but are constantly navigating a web of relationships? It begins with something as simple as offering fair and constructive criticism. Imagine a colleague at work has submitted a report that is subpar. The unjust response might be to mock them privately with other co-workers, to passive-aggressively highlight every error in a group email, or to simply dismiss their effort entirely. The just response, guided by Stoic virtue, is radically different. First, you would assume good intent, perhaps they were rushed or lacked training or are dealing with personal issues. Second, you would provide feedback privately, not to shame them but to uplift them. You might start by acknowledging what they did well, then clearly and calmly point out the areas for improvement, and finally, offer specific support or resources to help them do better next time. This approach treats the other person with dignity, aims for their improvement, and strengthens the entire team. It is an act of justice because it gives them what they are due, honest feedback delivered with respect. Another powerful daily practice is the conscious act of helping others without any expectation of return. This isn't about grand gestures of charity. It's about the micro-transactions of fairness that define your character. It's the decision to return the extra change a cashier mistakenly gave you. It's speaking up in a meeting to ensure a quiet colleague's good idea gets heard and credited to them. It's refusing to participate in gossip that would unfairly damage someone's reputation. Each of these small choices is a brick in the foundation of your integrity. They are often inconvenient in the moment. It's easier to keep the extra change, to steal the credit, to enjoy the juicy gossip. But the Stoic chooses the just path precisely because it is harder, because each right action fortifies their inner citadel against the temptation of taking the easy, unjust route. This builds a reputation of trustworthiness that becomes one of your greatest assets. People learn that you are fair, that your word is good, and that you can be relied upon. This external reputation is merely a reflection of the internal strength you've been cultivating all along. Ultimately, practicing justice is the ultimate expression of the Stoic belief in our shared humanity. It is the recognition that the same rational spirit resides in everyone, and to act unjustly toward another is to act against a part of the whole, and therefore against yourself. It is the final piece in building an unbreakable frame, because a frame built on virtue and integrity cannot be compromised by external pressure or selfish temptation. You stand firm not just for yourself, but as a pillar of fairness in a world that often seems anything but fair. In an age of relentless digital noise and information overload, the ancient Stoic call to guard your mind takes on a new and urgent meaning. This brings us to our 20th technique, mindful consumption. While the Stoics didn't have to contend with social media algorithms or 24-hour news cycles, their core principle is more relevant than ever. You must be the vigilant gatekeeper of your own mind, carefully choosing what you allow to enter it. Your mental space is your most sacred inner citadel, and every piece of content you consume is either a brick reinforcing its walls or a battering ram trying to break them down. Mindful consumption is the practice of applying the dichotomy of control to your media diet. recognizing that while you cannot control the chaotic stream of global events or online opinions, you have absolute sovereignty over your attention and your click. The modern media landscape is practically engineered to exploit our cognitive biases, constantly pushing content that triggers fear, outrage, and anxiety because those emotions drive engagement. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus offered a timeless warning when he said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." He was urging us to stop seeking validation and definition from outside sources. Today, that translates directly to breaking the addiction to the dopamine hit of likes, the need to have an opinion on every trending crisis, and the compulsion to constantly refresh the newsfeed. Each time you doom scroll through a feed of negative news or engage in a heated online argument, you are voluntarily inviting chaos, anger, and distraction into your mind. You are handing over control of your emotional state to algorithms designed to agitate you. This isn't just unhealthy, it's a direct violation of the Stoic goal of cultivating a tranquil and rational mind. To reclaim that control, you can implement a modern digital detox inspired by Stoic principles. This isn't about abandoning technology entirely, but about engaging with it intentionally. Start with a simple audit. For 1 week, track your screen time and, more importantly, note how you feel after using different apps or websites. Do you feel informed and energized after reading a long-form article, or drained and anxious after 20 minutes on a social media platform? This data is your guide. Based on this, begin to curate your digital environment with the same care you would curate your home. Unfollow accounts that primarily traffic in outrage or envy. Mute keywords that consistently lead you into unproductive arguments. Use website blockers to limit your time on known time-wasting sites. This isn't avoidance, it's strategic defense. You are not ignoring the world's problems. You are creating the mental clarity and quiet necessary to actually address the problems within your sphere of influence effectively. Beyond pruning the negative, actively cultivate the positive. Seek out content that aligns with Stoic values, sources that focus on solutions rather than just problems, that offer deep dives into history and philosophy, or that showcase human creativity and resilience. Replace the habit of checking the news first thing in the morning with a ritual of reading a few pages of a philosophical text or listening to an educational podcast. This sets a tone of purposeful engagement for your day rather than one of reactive panic. The goal is to shift your consumption from a passive, automatic activity to an active, conscious choice. Before clicking a link, ask yourself the Stoic questions. Will this bring something useful into my mind? Will it help me become more virtuous, or will it merely stir up passion and distract me from what I can control? By making your consumption intentional, you transform your media diet from a source of turmoil into a tool for building a stronger, more focused, and truly unbreakable frame. After a day spent navigating the chaos of the external world, how do you ensure your inner citadel remains strong? This brings us to a cornerstone of Stoic practice, a technique that turns each day into a personalized training session in virtue. Technique 21 is the evening review, a rigorous yet compassionate practice of self-audit championed by Seneca. In his moral letters, he describes ending each day with a quiet conversation with himself, walking back through his actions, his reactions, and his choices to measure them against the unwavering yardstick of Stoic principle. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I have done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This was not an exercise in self-flagellation, but one of the most powerful tools for continuous improvement ever devised. The purpose of this review is to close the gap between knowing the right path and actually walking it. We can intellectually understand the dichotomy of control or the value of amor fati, but it is in the heat of the moment that we forget. The evening review is how you bring those moments out of the shadows of your memory and into the light of reason, examining them without harsh judgment but with a sincere desire to learn. Seneca believed that we should be our own most gentle yet most honest judge, not to punish ourselves for our mistakes, but to identify the patterns that lead us astray and to consciously plan for a better tomorrow. It is the mechanism that turns daily experience into lasting wisdom, ensuring that every single day, no matter how difficult, contributes to the strengthening of your character. To conduct your own review, find a quiet space free from distraction, perhaps with a journal in hand. Structure your reflection around a few key questions that correlate directly to the Stoic disciplines. Start with perception. How did my initial judgments color the events of today? Did I immediately label an obstacle as a catastrophe, or was I able to see it neutrally? For instance, when your computer crashed and you lost an hour of work, did your mind scream, "This is a disaster"? Or were you able to pause and see it simply as an event, a neutral occurrence that now required a new action? This question helps you identify where you added unnecessary emotional suffering to an event through a faulty perception. Next, move to action. Where did my behavior align with the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance? Where did it fall short? Be brutally specific. Perhaps you demonstrated courage by speaking up for a colleague in a meeting, but later showed a lack of temperance by scrolling through social media for an hour instead of working on an important project. The key is to move from vague guilt to precise observation. Instead of "I was lazy," note, "I chose immediate distraction over my valued work," which is a failure of self-discipline. This precision is what allows for real change, because you can't fix a problem you haven't clearly defined. Then apply the core techniques directly. Did I use the dichotomy of control? When you felt anxious about a looming deadline, did you waste energy worrying about the outcome? Or did you focus that energy entirely on the specific, controllable actions you could take right then? Did I practice Amor Fati? When your lunch plans were cancelled unexpectedly, did you grumble and resent the change, or did you find a way to accept and even appreciate the newfound time? Finally, ask yourself the most important question of all. What is one thing I can do better tomorrow based on what I learned today? This turns reflection into intention. Maybe your lesson is to implement a digital curfew to improve focus, or to practice a 5-minute breathing meditation when you first feel stress begin to rise. The ultimate goal of this practice is progressive refinement, not perfection. Some nights your review will reveal many missteps. The Stoic response is not despair, but gratitude for the clarity. Each identified mistake is simply a new training manual, a specific weakness you have discovered and can now begin to strengthen. Over weeks and months of this practice, you will start to see a remarkable shift. You'll catch yourself in the moment more often, applying the pause before you speak or reframing an obstacle as it happens. The review teaches you to become a student of your own life, actively engaged in your own transformation. It ensures that you are not merely passing through your days, but consciously crafting them, building an unbreakable frame one thoughtful evening at a time. Imagine building a structure so secure within yourself that the loudest applause or the harshest criticism simply echoes off its walls without causing even a tremor. This is the profound state we explore with our 20-second Stoic technique, cultivating a deep indifference to external praise and criticism. The goal is not to become cold or unfeeling, but to achieve a state of unshakable self-worth that is generated internally, making you the sole and final judge of your own character. The Stoics called this adiaphora, a concept that refers to things which are neither good nor bad, merely indifferent to your moral character, and the opinions of others, whether flattering or damning, sit squarely in this category. Your virtue, your effort, your intentions, these are the only things that are truly good. Everything else is just noise. We can see the power and the challenge of this practice in the lives of public figures who operate under an unimaginable microscope. Consider a renowned artist like Beyoncé. She releases an album to both rapturous critical acclaim and a tidal wave of online critique. If her creative drive and sense of self were tied to either extreme, her career would be an emotional roller coaster of soaring highs and crushing lows, making sustained excellence impossible. Her ability to consistently produce groundbreaking work suggests a profound internal compass. She likely focuses on her own artistic standards, the integrity of her creative process, and the message she wants to convey, metrics she controls completely. The reviews, whether in Rolling Stone or on social media, are external weather. She has built a solid shelter for her artistic spirit. Similarly, a pioneering scientist like Marie Curie faced immense skepticism and even outright hostility from a male-dominated academic establishment. Her work on radioactivity was initially met with doubt and dismissal. Had she required external validation to continue, she would have abandoned her research. Instead, her validation came from within, from her own rigorous observations, her unwavering curiosity, and her deep belief in the importance of her discoveries. Her internal compass guided her to not one but 2 Nobel Prizes, forever changing the world. So how do we, in our own less public lives, build this same kind of resilience? The first and most powerful strategy is to undertake a deliberate values clarification exercise. External opinions only have power over us when they connect to something we already doubt about ourselves, or when we are unclear on our own metrics for success. Sit down with a journal and ask yourself a series of pointed questions. What are my core values? Is it creativity, integrity, compassion, growth? What does a life well lived look like to me personally? Then, based on those values, what are my intrinsic goals? An intrinsic goal is something like, I want to master the craft of woodworking, or I aim to be a more patient and present parent. These are goals whose achievement you can measure yourself based on your own effort and standards. Contrast this with an extrinsic goal like, I want to be seen as the best woodworker in town, or I want other parents to think I'm doing a great job. These are entirely dependent on the opinions of others. When your sense of accomplishment is tied to intrinsic goals, you can look at a finished piece of furniture and feel pride in the precision of your dovetail joints, regardless of whether anyone else notices them. You can end a challenging day with your children and feel successful because you managed to pause and breathe instead of yelling, even if no one was there to witness it. You become the source of your own report card. Another vital daily practice is the art of cognitive reframing when praise or criticism arrives. When someone offers you a compliment, rather than simply absorbing it as fuel for your ego, use it as a moment of stoic reflection. Thank them graciously, but internally ask yourself, is this praise aligned with my own assessment of my effort and virtue? If it is, let it be a minor, confirming echo of your own judgment, not the source of it. If the praise is for something superficial you don't value, let it pass through you without sticking. The same process, but in reverse, applies to criticism. When critiqued, pause, ask, does this feedback point to a legitimate misalignment with my own values? Is there a kernel of truth here that can help me grow? If so, accept that kernel with gratitude and discard the rest, including any hostile delivery or unfair generalizations. If the criticism is entirely baseless and reflects the other person's own issues, simply recognize it as such, a statement about their reality, not yours, and let it go like a leaf floating down a river. This isn't easy, it requires vigilant practice, but each time you successfully depersonalize an external opinion, you withdraw a little more of your emotional investment in it until it simply loses its power to affect your core sense of self. Ultimately, this cultivation of indifference is the final layer of armor for your unbreakable frame. It means that your peace, your worth, and your motivation are no longer held hostage by a world that is often fickle, unfair, and distracted. You are free to pursue your purpose with clarity and courage, not because you are guaranteed applause, but because the pursuit itself governed by your own virtue. is its own greatest reward. You become like a deep-rooted tree, unaffected by the changing winds of popular opinion, drawing your strength from a source that can never be taken from you. While the classic dichotomy of control is the bedrock of Stoic practice, some modern thinkers have proposed a useful refinement that adds a crucial layer of nuance to how we navigate the complexities of modern life. This is the trichotomy of control, an adaptation that inserts a vital third category between the two poles of what we control and what we don't. This new category is the realm of things we cannot control completely, but we can most certainly influence. This isn't a rejection of ancient wisdom. It's an expansion that helps us allocate our energy with even greater precision, moving us from a binary switch to a nuanced dial that we can adjust for maximum effectiveness and minimum frustration. The classic dichotomy can sometimes feel a bit too rigid when applied to collaborative or long-term endeavors. For instance, you absolutely control your own effort on a team project at work, but you don't control the final outcome, which depends on your teammates, the client, and market conditions. If you view this through a strict dichotomy, you might think your only options are to focus solely on your own work and become completely detached from the result. But what about offering to help a struggling colleague? What about preparing an extra thorough presentation to better persuade the client? These actions live in the middle ground. They are not within your absolute control, but you can influence them. The trichotomy empowers you to identify and act within this middle ground, transforming you from a passive observer of your own efforts into a strategic participant who understands the difference between force and influence. Let's make this practical with a common goal: improving your physical health. Using the strict dichotomy, you would note that you fully control your decision to go to the gym today and what you choose to eat for your next meal. You do not control your genetic predisposition, your metabolism, or whether you might get injured. The trichotomy adds the powerful middle layer. While you cannot control the exact number on the scale next month and outcome, you can profoundly influence it. Your influence extends to creating a consistent workout schedule, researching healthy recipes, hiring a knowledgeable trainer for guidance, and ensuring you get quality sleep each night. These are not guarantees, but they are high-leverage actions that significantly sway the probability of your desired outcome. This framework stops you from wasting energy despairing over your genetics and redirects that energy into the vast array of influential actions actually available to you. This approach is invaluable in any collaborative environment, like a team project. You control your contribution, the quality of your work, your punctuality on deadlines, your positive attitude. You do not control your colleagues' performance, sudden budget cuts from leadership, or a client changing their mind. The trichotomy guides you to focus on your sphere of influence. You can influence your teammates by offering support and clear communication. You can influence the client's perception by proactively providing updates and anticipating their questions. You can influence the project's resilience by identifying potential risks early and proposing solutions. You pour your energy into this expansive realm of influence, all the while understanding that the final outcome remains partially outside your command. This prevents the frustration of trying to control others while also preventing the apathy of doing only the bare minimum. You engage fully where you can make a difference and release attachment to the ultimate result, achieving a state of dynamic and peaceful effort. The key to applying the trichotomy effectively is a simple three-step mental filter you can use for any challenge. First, when a goal or problem arises, consciously sort the factors into three lists: control, influence, and no control. Your control list should be very short, only your judgments, values, and voluntary actions. Your no control list will be long: the past, the weather, other people's thoughts. The magic happens in the influence list. Brainstorm every single action you could take that might sway the situation, even slightly. Second, immediately stop expending any mental or physical energy on the no control list. This is wasted effort. Third, and most importantly, prioritize your effort. Devote the vast majority of your energy to your control list. This is your foundation. Then, strategically invest effort from the remainder into the most promising items on your influence list. This is how you build an unbreakable yet adaptable frame, rooted in absolute command over your inner world, while wisely and effectively engaging with the outer world where it matters most. Ancient Stoic wisdom profoundly understood a truth that modern science is only now catching up to. The mind and body are not separate entities to be trained in isolation, but a single, integrated system. You cannot build an unbreakable mental frame while neglecting the physical vessel that carries it. This brings us to our 24th technique, physical resilience training. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus was perhaps the most vocal proponent of this mind-body connection. He argued vigorously that philosophy was not just an abstract exercise for the intellect, but a practical discipline that must involve the whole person. He famously stated that a philosopher must be in good physical condition because how could a feeble body ever be the vehicle for a vigorous and active mind? For Rufus, physical training wasn't about vanity or athletic prowess. It was about forging a tool that was reliable, durable, and capable of executing the commands of a disciplined will. A body that is weak, lethargic, or constantly succumbing to minor ailments becomes a persistent source of distraction and excuse, constantly pulling your attention away from your higher pursuits and breaking your focus. Rufus prescribed simple, accessible, and functional exercises. He was a particular advocate for digging, an activity that builds functional strength, and for walking, which he saw as the ideal exercise for a thinker. He believed walking, especially in nature, was superior to expensive gym workouts because it was free, accessible to all, and perfectly conducive to contemplation. The rhythmic, steady motion of walking has a meditative quality that allows the mind to process, reflect, and find clarity. Think of the great thinkers throughout history who were avid walkers, from Aristotle and his peripatetic school to Steve Jobs and his famous walking meetings. This is not a coincidence. The gentle, bilateral stimulation of walking seems to unlock creative and philosophical thinking, making it a perfect embodiment of Stoic mind-body unity. It's a practice that simultaneously strengthens the heart, lungs, and legs while creating the ideal conditions for a calm and ordered mind. To integrate this ancient wisdom into your modern life, you don't need a radical fitness overhaul or an expensive membership. The goal is consistency and mindful engagement, not intensity or punishment. Start with a simple, daily walking routine. Commit to a 20 or 30-minute walk each day, preferably outdoors. This is your non-negotiable foundation, but this isn't just a stroll while staring at your phone. Practice what could be called mindful walking. As you walk, pay attention to the sensation of your feet connecting with the ground. Notice the rhythm of your breath. Observe the world around you without immediate judgment, the temperature of the air, the sounds, the colors. When your mind inevitably wanders to a worry or a to-do list, gently guide it back to the physical sensations of the present moment. This transforms a simple walk into a moving meditation, a practice in anchoring yourself in the here and now, which is the very essence of Stoic presence. Beyond walking, incorporate a few foundational bodyweight exercises to build functional strength and resilience. Again, the emphasis is on consistency and mastery, not on lifting massive weights. A simple routine performed 3 times a week could include push-ups, squats, and planks. The Stoic lesson is in the approach. When you drop to the floor for your last few push-ups and your muscles are burning, that is the moment to practice your philosophy. Your mind will scream at you to stop. Your job is to consciously override that impulse, to connect with your breathing, and to complete the final repetitions with perfect form. You are not just building muscle, you are building willpower. You are teaching your body that discomfort is not a signal to shut down, but a sensation to be observed and moved through. The burning in your legs during a squat is no different than the anxiety before a difficult conversation. It's a feeling, and you get to choose your relationship to it. By voluntarily embracing physical discomfort in a controlled environment, you are inoculating yourself against the involuntary discomforts of life. This physical practice serves as a powerful metaphor for mental toughness. Your physical frame, your posture, your stamina, your resilience is a direct reflection of your inner state. A slumped posture can reinforce feelings of defeatism, while standing tall with your shoulders back can actually trigger a neurochemical response of confidence. By strengthening your physical frame, you are quite literally building a more supportive structure for your mind. The discipline required to show up for your walk on a rainy day is the exact same discipline required to open a difficult spreadsheet instead of procrastinating. The focus required to hold a plank for 10 more seconds is the same focus required to stay present in a stressful meeting. You are developing a single, universal muscle, the muscle of showing up, of doing what is necessary, of embracing the small grind with consistency. This is how you build a resilience that is not theoretical, but embodied, a strength that is woven into your very flesh and bones, ready to support you when life inevitably leans hard upon you. We've all been there, that sudden, sharp sting of an insult, the flare of anger when someone pushes our buttons, the almost irresistible urge to fire back with a cutting remark of our own. It's one of the most immediate tests of our frame, a moment where all the philosophy in the world can evaporate in a flash of heat. This is where our 25th and final technique comes in, a practical toolkit for what the Stoics called the Stoic response to provocation. This isn't about winning arguments or delivering the perfect zinger. It's about winning the only battle that truly matters, the one for your own peace of mind and self-respect. It's the art of meeting fire not with more fire, but with an unshakable, cool dignity that renders the attack powerless. The Stoics faced this constantly. As a public philosopher, Epictetus would have been a prime target for hecklers and critics trying to disrupt his lectures and goad him into a reaction. His advice was characteristically blunt and brilliant. He said that when insulted, you must remember that it is the person's opinion that has struck you, not the insult itself. He used a beautiful analogy. If someone insists that you have only one eye, you wouldn't get angry and try to convince them otherwise if you clearly have two. You'd simply dismiss their comment as irrelevant to reality. He urged his students to treat all insults this way. The insult is their flawed judgment, their incorrect assessment. Why would you be upset by someone else's mistake? Why grant their misperception the power to control your emotional state? This reframe is the foundational move, the mental pivot that must happen before any words leave your mouth. But philosophy must become action. To prepare for these heated moments, we can borrow a powerful tool from modern psychology: role-playing. The goal is to build what's called muscle memory for your composure. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that triggers the fight or flight response, is incredibly fast. In the face of a perceived threat like an insult, it will hijack your higher brain functions and push you toward a primal reaction before you can even think. The only way to beat this ancient wiring is to pre-program a better response through repetition. By mentally rehearsing calm reactions to provocation, you create new, stronger neural pathways. When the real moment hits, your brain has a pre-loaded, practiced script to follow, making it far more likely you'll choose the stoic response over the reactive one. Let's put this into practice with some specific stoic-inspired phrases you can have ready. Your aim is never to escalate, but to de-escalate and disarm. The first and most powerful response is often simple, calm agreement. If someone says, "You're being completely incompetent on this project," instead of defending yourself, you might respond with, "You may be right, I might have missed the mark here. What specifically are you most concerned about?" This does three things instantly. It completely neutralizes their aggression. It's impossible to fight with someone who agrees with you. It demonstrates immense confidence because only a truly secure person can accept criticism without flinching, and it immediately shifts the dynamic from a personal attack to a problem-solving discussion, forcing them to move from emotion to specifics. Another effective technique is to reframe the insult as a reflection of their internal state, not your worth. If someone throws a personal barb your way, like a snide comment about your appearance, you can respond with gentle curiosity. It sounds like you're quite upset about something. Is everything okay? This response, delivered with genuine calm, accomplishes two things. First, it exposes the insult for what it often is, a projection of their own frustration or unhappiness. Second, it transfers the emotional burden right back to them. Suddenly, they are the one who has to explain their behavior, not you who has to defend yourself. It's a psychologically sophisticated move that maintains your frame entirely. For moments where a response isn't even necessary, you have the ultimate Stoic option, dignified silence. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to simply not engage at all. You can look at the person, acknowledge that they have spoken with a slight nod, and then simply carry on with what you are doing or turn to speak to someone else. This silent treatment isn't the cold shoulder of ignorance. It's the conscious choice of a person who knows that some battles are not worth fighting and that some comments are not worthy of a response. It sends a clear message: your words do not have enough weight to even warrant my energy. This is perhaps the highest form of the Stoic response, as it requires utter confidence and complete inner security. To truly ingrain these responses, you must practice them. Find a trusted friend or partner and role-play a few scenarios. Have them throw some common insults or provocations your way, the kind you might face at work or in your social life. Your job is not to craft a witty comeback, but to practice deploying your Stoic phrases with a calm tone and steady body language. You may be right. It sounds like you're upset, or simply pausing, taking a breath and saying nothing. Do this 10 times, 20 times. The repetition might feel silly at first, but you are literally building a new default setting. You are teaching your nervous system that an insult is not a 5-alarm fire, but a minor event that you are fully equipped to handle with grace. This is the final brick in the construction of your unbreakable frame. The proven ability to stand firm, calm, and utterly in control, even when the world tries its hardest to push you off balance. And so we reach the end of our journey through these 25 powerful Stoic techniques. We began by building our foundation with the bedrock principle, the dichotomy of control, learning to sort our world into what is ours to command and what is not. We then prepared our minds for adversity through the sobering yet liberating practice of negative visualization, understanding that by premeditating potential losses, we inoculate ourselves against fear and deepen our gratitude for the present. This led us directly to the ultimate reframe of Amor Fati, the love of one's fate, where we choose to embrace every event, especially the obstacles, as the very raw material for our growth. We gained cosmic perspective with the view from above, shrinking our daily anxieties down to their true size against the backdrop of the infinite universe, and then turned that perspective inward with the disciplined practice of Stoic journaling, auditing our days to close the gap between knowledge and action. We discovered that the obstacle is the way, transforming every barrier into our path forward through clear perception, directed action, and an iron will. We confronted our own mortality with Memento Mori, using the awareness of life's finitude to infuse our days with urgent purpose and clarity. We fortified our resilience by voluntarily seeking discomfort, proving to ourselves that we can handle life's inevitable hardships, and we mastered the critical Stoic pause, creating a space between stimulus and response where our freedom truly lies. We cultivated a profound sense of gratitude, shifting our focus from lack to abundance, and we sought wise counsel through the contemplation of the sage, invoking an inner guide for our toughest decisions. We redirected our entire sense of success by focusing on process over outcome, finding satisfaction in our efforts rather than in unpredictable results. We extended our strength outward through empathy and understanding, recognizing that the flaws of others stem from ignorance, not malice, and we took command of our inner world with the advanced discipline of assent, learning to interrogate every impression before granting it power over us. We sought harmony by living in accordance with nature, aligning our individual reason with the greater cosmos and finding our unique role within it. We armed our minds with portable wisdom by using maxims and quotes, and we cultivated immense power through the art of silence, understanding that often the strongest response is a measured, thoughtful quiet. We found peace in the flow of existence by accepting impermanence, embracing the truth that all things change, and we built a reputation of unwavering integrity by practicing justice and fairness in our smallest daily interactions. We defended our mental citadel through mindful consumption, becoming the vigilant gatekeepers of our own attention in a distracting world. We engaged in a nightly evening review, turning each day into a personalized training session in virtue, and we achieved true inner freedom by cultivating an indifference to external praise and criticism, becoming the final judge of our own worth. We refined our engagement with the world through the nuanced trichotomy of control, focusing our energy on what we can influence, and we honored the sacred mind-body connection through physical resilience training, forging a vessel capable of executing a disciplined will. Finally, we prepared for the heat of the moment with a stoic response to provocation, learning to meet fire with unshakable, cool dignity. Individually, each of these techniques is a powerful tool for resilience. But collectively, they are something far greater. They are an integrated operating system for an unbreakable frame. This is not about becoming emotionless or rigid. It is about building a core of strength so solid that you can engage with the full spectrum of human experience with courage, compassion, and profound peace. You are no longer a leaf tossed by the winds of fortune, but a deeply rooted tree able to bend with the storm without breaking. The prospect of integrating all 25 might feel overwhelming, so don't try to tackle them all at once. The Stoics were masters of gradual, consistent practice. Choose just one technique that resonates most with you right now. Perhaps it's the nightly gratitude journal or the Stoic Pause, or a simple daily walk for contemplation. Commit to practicing that single technique for 1 week. See how it shifts your perspective, how it alters your reactions. Then, the following week, you might layer in another. This is how you build the frame, one deliberate brick at a time. If you found this journey valuable, consider subscribing to the channel for more practical wisdom. We delve deep into Stoic philosophy and other timeless traditions, always focusing on how you can apply these ancient tools to your modern life. And I would truly love to hear about your experiences. Which of these 25 techniques did you try first? How did it change your day? Share your stories in the comments below. Your insights become part of our collective learning. These are not merely abstract ideas from a distant past. They are a living, breathing toolkit forged in the fires of actual human struggle by some of history's most resilient minds. They are an invitation to transform your relationship with challenge itself, to stop seeing problems as interruptions to your life, and to start recognizing them as the very practice grounds for the strength, wisdom, and unshakable character you are always meant to develop. The path is here, the tools are in your hands, your unbreakable frame awaits.